Good morning and welcome to the second tutorial in content creation. Excuse my voice at the moment. I've recorded this over 2 separate days and I've inherited a head cold or something, so you're going to hear me at different timbres throughout the video. But regarding the default texture I've spoken about a few times, I thought about going through the process of creating a texture, which isn't hard, but it will take up unnecessary time. If you want to create your own 128 by 128 pixel white texture in Photoshop or GIMP, feel free to do so. What I've elected to do though is I've created a zip file of 30 textures and I've put them in the video description below. So if you want to go that way, download the textures, save yourself a lot of trouble. I was going to, well, I can't provide them in world. It has to be via just my Google download, what do they call it, Google Drive, because if it was in world I would be the creator. So it's coming back to, we want you to be the creator of the files, so that the system recognizes you as the creator. So to that end, you need to bring them in world, and the only way to do that is to have the unzipped files. But yeah, okay, let's get into it. Our first building project will be this poolside gazebo. You don't have to use it in a swimming pool, you can just have it out in the yard, but it just looks kind of cool, a bit of a pool island where people can swim up to and lay under a shelter. Now, the reason I've chosen this one is it basically just uses cubes and cylinders. So it's a good starting point. We'll get to cover a lot of the features of the build tool that we looked at yesterday, and we'll also get to look at some new ones, including flexi properties. So this will be pretty cool. As you can see, the curtains are moving in the breeze there, ever so subtly. We will get into all that magic today. We're now going to upload those to the game. So if you go into upload bulk, now we're going to create a separate folder in your textures folder, just so we can keep track of them. And we'll call it something memorable like tutorial support textures. And go back to recent items, cut them out of there. Cut. And paste into the folder. Okay, while we're at it, we're going to set your default texture. So into preferences there, Firestorm, build 1, you'll see the default texture there. Click on it. Now, obviously I've already got a white default texture set. Yours would look like wood. We're going to set this to a file called plain white FFFFFF. Okay, done, beautiful. We will double check your preferences that you set yesterday. Your permissions, sorry, should all be copy mod. We're not worried about note cards, always leave those full permission, and gestures don't really matter. I don't think anyone uses gestures anymore. Okay, finally, let's set the time of day to midday, pardon me, so that it's easier to see things. So we're back here on Resort Land and we're ready to do our build. Now what I'm going to do is just drop a copy of that out here as a reference. I know that usually you wouldn't have a building to copy off, but because this is a tutorial, we want to have that reference so you can see what you're building towards. Okay, so I've placed that down, and what I'm going to do, just for the sake of making measurements easy, I'm going to snap it to the grid. So I might take it to the nearest 5 meters. So green on the 205 meters on the green. It's 21.5 on the blue, which is the Z axis, and it's a nice round number, and the red is 120. So over here it's 120, 205 to 1.5. Something I meant to say the other day too, above your camera controls here, you'll notice numbers, and they change depending on what mode you're in. So at the moment they're showing the positions as indicated in the edit window, and the reason it does that is because as soon as I start moving this object, and I'll show you in a moment, but I'll move this on the red axis, red axis in a moment, and you'll see that the edit window actually disappears. See how it's gone? But that's okay, because you have the numbers up the top to refer to. So I can still line that up, and I let go, and the edit window returns. So that's just so that you've got more room to see what you're doing while you're actually moving something around. Likewise, if you're in rotate, the numbers up the top change to the rotation part of the edit window, so it shows you the how everything's positioned in the rotation. Righto, so enough of that, let's build. So what we're going to do, we've lined that up to the nearest 10 meters in all directions. We're going to create our first prim, and that will be this base prim, the yellow, the root prim. So we go up to the edit window here, we click on the create button up the top. That bottom is a cube or a box. I don't know why they call it a box. It says cube in one place and box in another, but anyway. So here we go. Bang. Now to the size part of the edit window, we're going to change that to 7.5 meters on the X, then 7.5 on the Y, and 1 meter on the Z. Okay. We're also going to snap to the grid. So the other one's 21.5, so I'm going to set this to 21.5. And I'll match up the, you don't need to do this because you don't have a demo, but I'm just doing it so it looks a bit more clear. 120 on the red and 215 on the green. Lovely. Okay, now you'll notice that this is tapered. So strangely, we use a feature called taper, and I'd say that's about 50 degrees or thereabouts. Okay, what it's telling us here is the taper is 0.25. So if we go to taper, 0.25, second window, so that tapers the red axis, and then just tab across to the next window, 0.25 again, and that's the y-axis. Again, it matches up with the green and red arrows. Okay, next thing we're going to do is texture this. There are two ways that we can texture this prim. So firstly, you can go over back to the edit window and you'll see the texture tab, and you go down to the texture and click on it, and it comes up with the name of the texture that is currently active, and because you set the plain white FFF texture as the default, that's what it is showing by default. We're going to choose gold. It's in that folder that it's in amongst the downloads there. I think it's called Gold 2. There it is. Gold 2. There we go. So that is one way of selecting the texture, right? I'm going to show you the other way now. I'll just take this back to the plain white. Okay, and that is to go via your inventory. And I tend to use both of these methods, just depending on where I am on the day. But if we go down to your texture folder, in your inventory, and there's the folder of tutorial texture files, So I could click on that, and rather than opening that and scrolling through, because your texture library can end up very big, I'm just finding gold 2 there in the inventory and dragging that over to the window, and it has the same effect. Okay, now equally we're about to, you'll see that there's a different texture there on the top. Now remember in the last one we were talking about the select face button here, where you could choose one face. Now if we look at this really closely, every face is selected at the moment. See that symbol, that sort of crosshairs on each face? We only want one face, so we're going to choose the top one. Okay, that's the face we're using. And again, we'll click on this, and we'll choose one called, I think it's marble? No, coral plane. There it is, coral 17 plane. We'll pop that one on top. Voila, and the rest are unaffected. Okay, finally, you'll notice that this looks a bit brighter and this one looks a bit more satin. And the reason is because I've applied a shininess aspect to this prim. So if you click on that and you're back in the texture tab here, you'll see 3 buttons there: texture, bumpiness and shininess. If you click on the shininess button, you'll see that it says low. On ours it says none. Okay, so the sample that I've got there says low. On your version that you've just made, it will say none. So what we're going to do is change that none to low. And look at that, same as the other one. We'll double check that that select face should also have a shininess aspect. Yes, it also says low, so that's fine. We've done well. Okay, that's the base done. The next thing we're going to do is the roof. And that's this little chappy up the top here. Okay, it's a box shape. It's hollow. You might remember we did something similar to that on the car yesterday. The tray in the back of the pickup was hollow. So we're going to do that again. Now, we can res another prim. Right, we can res another cube and start from scratch. But we actually need gold on this. So what we're going to do is click on that, hold down your shift key and drag the blue arrow upwards, and you've just created a copy. It's just copied that, and that saves you having to do a lot of mucking around with the textures and that again. We will simply change this one face back to gold, because all those faces are gold. And we will get rid of the tapers. So change that back to 0 and 0. Now we're going to resize it. Let's make that 4.8 on the X, 4.8 on the Y, and 0.1 on the Z. Yep, that looks pretty good. Just leave it there for the moment. Let's hollow it out. We're not going to make it exactly the same as the other one. We're going to, because as I say, you usually won't have a reference point there. That looks pretty good. I've taken that up to 95. You might find that your system converts that to a slightly off number. Like in my case, it's showing 94.992. Don't worry about it, that's fine. Now, we're going to shift copy this piece again. Actually, sorry. Now, we're going to snap that vertically. I'd say we take that up about, let's make it 26. So that's 21.5. So that'll be just under 5 meters, 4.5 meters. Yep, that's fine. A lot of avatars are 2.5 meters tall, so you want to allow a bit of height, and you can always adjust this later, it's not set in stone. So my bottom one is 1.5, my top one is 26, we're talking about the z-axis there. So there's about 4.5 meters difference, not including the width of the objects. Okay, so again we're going to shift copy, this time the top one. Right, now we're going to get rid of the hollow, completely get rid of the hollow. We're going to make this slightly smaller, so because it's going to fit inside this hollow. You'll see it's like a transparent roof. So we're going to change that to say 4.5, 4.5, and instead of 0.1 we'll make it 0.01. So it's super thick. We'll go to the texture. You should have one there called plain purple. Now, of course, you can make these, use any textures you want, but this is just for the sake of the tutorial. This is what I'm trying to make, what we've already got there. Plain purple. Lovely. Now, using your grid, snap to grid, we're going to drop that down inside, perfectly inside that other piece. So 26 meters on the Z was my outer piece. So the inner piece is also 26 meters on the Z. You can see, if we zoom in, that there's a little bit of a gap there. Now, and it's going to be equidistant all the way around. So we can fix that by either making this roof larger, or reducing the amount of hollowness in the surrounding piece. I'm going to reduce the hollowness, so I'll just knock that down 5%. So that's pulled up at 90%. So yeah, that looks nice. That's pretty good. Now we're going to add some transparency to this roof area. So click on your roof. We want that to be slightly transparent so the sun can get through, but not the full sun. So again, go to your texture tab, click on texture, and you'll see a feature there called transparency, and it should be set to 0. Let's change that to 25. Quarter transparent, and you see how you can partially see through it now? So it creates a transparency effect. Lovely. Now what we're going to do, because all of these parts are in their final position, they don't need to be moved again, and we've pretty much finished with them. They're also the only cubes in the build. So what we're going to do is link them all together. So grab one piece, and then hold your shift key down, grab another piece, and connect them to the base. Connect the base last, because the base is going to be our root prim. Okay, then up here you'll see, in the edit window, you'll see link. Click the link button. And you've just made an object. So remember the other day when we were looking at the car and I said there was a root prim was yellow, had a yellow highlight, and the other prims were light blue? Well, that's what you have now. You've got a yellow root prim, and if you look at these other two roof pieces, they're highlighted in light blue. Okay, aren't we clever? Okay, so now we're going to do the posts that hold it up. And for this we need a cylinder. These posts here are just really skinny cylinders. So let's create, choose cylinder from the line up there, pop it anywhere on the prim. Now we're going to use the stretch tool for this because it's nice and simple. You need to zoom in a bit, and remember the blue axis goes up and down, so that's the, if you hover over there you'll see the little blue square highlight itself. Now there was 4.5 meters between these two, so we're going to need this vertical probably more than 4, but not quite 4.5. So using our snap, we'll take it up to 4.25. And remember, while I'm doing this, you can see these measurements up the top. Even though the edit window is gone, it says 0.5, 0.5, 4.25. So that's exactly what we want. Let's see. So that's poking out the top a bit. What did we do over here? So over here we had the same thing. We had it poking out a little bit. Okay, now we need it skinnier. So let's try oh, look, I think that's going to be really skinny. We might even go in at 0.05. Whoops, too many points there. 0.05. And again 0.05 on the green. And the 4.25 is correct, so we don't want to change that. Now click your move button up there in the edit window. And we're going to be clever here and just slide this over so that it intersects the edge. So what we've done there is it intersects that golden outside piece. That looks pretty good. And now we'll move it into the corner. Okay, so you can see there that it's basically, because I've snapped to grid, it's perfectly equidistant from there to there, and even at the ground level from there to there. And because we resed the prim on top of that platform, we know that it's touching the base perfectly. Okay, if you put it on the ground or something, no. But if you go down the bottom here, look at that, it's sitting on there perfectly. Okay, now we're going to texture that, and we'll change it to, I think there's a stainless steel one there. There we go, that looks pretty good. Gradient stainless steel. Okay, that looks pretty cool-ish. Meh. It kind of does, but it's got this big, it leaves the big grey bit in the middle. So this is another feature in the texture tab we're going to use now. We'll keep that stainless steel, that's fine. But you're in the texture tab, so go down to, we want to adjust the vertical scale so that dark bits go at the base and the top rather than in the middle. So if you go down the side here, you'll see a horizontal scale, vertical scale, all this sort of thing down the side. Down the bottom there we have something called vertical offset. So that's what we want. We want to offset that texture so that we can get the darker area down the bottom or the top. So let's just increase that a wee bit and see how the texture is shifting on the prim. I would say that's going to be 0.5 that we want. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's apply. So if we click on the shininess button now, we'll put a low shine on that as well. Take some of the harshness out of it. That looks pretty good. That's pretty close to what we've got on the other one. Again, we can dabble with that later. For now, that's done. Okay, so let's copy this post because we need 3 more. Hold down your shift key on the red arrow, drag, and we'll do the same thing, snapping to grid into the corner again, perfectly lined up. Now we'll join these two cylinders, so the 2 posts. Hold down your shift key and connect them both. So we're going to link those 2 to each other. We're not linking them to the main object yet, just to each other. And you'll see that they're now 2 prims linked together. So when we shift drag, we'll actually copy both prims. Take them over to the other corner. Line them up. Again, snap to grid, they're perfectly placed. We'll join all 4 of those together. Link, and now we'll link them to the base. So we want to remember, we want to link the base last. Link. Okay, so we're up to the curtains. We'll give this thing a name while we think of it. We'll just call it what you want. I'm going to call it Gazebo. Gazebo. And that's it. Modify copy, that's all fine. Now, this is totally new bit for you. We'll be using part of the edit window called features. And this is where it gets super cool. We're going to make these curtains, and they have some great properties in that they move with the wind, they're slightly flexible, and you're also able to walk through them. So ordinarily if you walk onto a prim, your avatar will go up onto the prim. But those are what is called phantom, and it allows you to walk through them. And that is because they have this flexi attribute applied to it. And indeed, if you click on that and edit linked, okay, we go for one of those curtains, you'll see on the features tab it says flexible, and on the objects tab, okay, that's curious. We might have to unlink it. Yes, okay. So on the objects tab, it actually has phantom ticked, and it can't be changed. It's been grayed out. So the act of creating a flexible path on that object makes it phantom. So you don't have to worry about making it phantom. But you want it to be realistic, like if you're walking. The idea of that is so you can walk through it like you would through a curtain or a drape. Okay. So we will do that here now. We will create our curtains. Let's go up to create. Again, we're onto a cylinder. Now these are a little bit more complex, but as promised, we're going to increase the complexity with each build. There's our cylinder. Now, again, we're going to use the stretch tool, and we want to take that up. We'll move that just under the yellow outer ring there, and we know that it's sitting on that prim, so it's exactly the right position on the bottom. But now we want to stretch it because we want this to be almost as high as the roof, but not quite, because the curtain's going to be dragging. So drop it down, and by my maths, or here it says 3.875 meters. Okay, so it's not quite touching. Okay, so now what we're going to do is apply our flexible path to the end of the features tab. Tick flexible path, and you'll see all these values become populated. We want this to drift on the wind a little bit, so we're going to, where it says wind, just put in 0.2. Okay, so now see how it's all gone soft and spongy and it's moving a little bit? Unfortunately, it's moving the top and not the bottom. So how are we going to fix that? If you said rotate it, you're 100% correct. So let's rotate it. So we've hit the rotate button there. At the moment it says 0, 0, 0. We're going to turn it 180 degrees on the green axis. Okay, so here we go. Out to the grid line, all the way around to the bottom. And now it's disappeared. So we need to pull it up there. We're going to bring that. We might have to do this by hand. Yeah, because we can take it to there. No, that's all right. Take it up there. It doesn't matter that this is intersecting a bit. That's fine, because we're going to. You're not going to be able to see all that in a moment. Okay, the next stage, completely hollow this out. So as high as that will go. Great. See how that's completely hollow in there? That is reading 99% for me. And now we want to cut it. So we want basically 50% of that cut away, the bit that's underneath the roof. So let's get rid of 50% of it by on the path cut there, changing that to 0.5. Okay, that's gotten rid of the wrong half, so change it back to 0. It's actually on the other box there next to it where it says E. Change that to 0.5. Okay, sometimes these things do catch you by surprise and you can't really explain them, but yeah, it's just the way it is. So you can see that that's hollow and we have a semicircular shape. Now we need to taper that. So we go back down to the taper window here. Remember we tapered the floor before? Now we're going to taper this so that it's nice and thin. It's on the green axis. We have to decrease it, so we need a negative number. There we go. Okay. See how that's changing? I'm up to 0.6, 0.75. I think we'll go with 0.75. So see how it's quite flat and quite narrow? Okay. So that was the y-axis. Now we're going to do the x-axis. Same thing, we'll have to go to a negative number. I think probably... Do we want to go 750 again? Yeah, why not? Why not? We might make that a little narrower as well in the object dimensions, just to flatten that out a little bit so it doesn't look quite as wide. So on the green, which is the north-south one there, let's change that to say 0.25. Okay, and that gives us a much flatter profile down the bottom, so it doesn't look like it's ballooning as much. Okay. Now we actually want that texture to be white. Let's move it over here. So again, I'm using snap to grid. I'm on the red axis. You can see the y-axis is lined up beautifully under that outer lip. Okay, so we now want to apply a transparency to that. So you'll remember we've already done that for the roof. Under your texture tab, transparency, let's maybe 40. Yeah, we might stick to 25. Yeah, 25 looks good. And I think we might even need that a little bit wider at the bottom, I think. So go back to our object tab. So that's the x-axis. Let's increase that to 1 meter. Okay. Right, now let's slide this along. I'm going to snap to grid. And 118.5. That works for me. Now, shift and drag, because we need many of them. But we just got to see how much overlap we need. That looks quite good. So how far apart are those? So I've placed mine, so that's 118.375. I've put the next one 0.75 meters away, so this one is 119.125. So yes, that's 0.75 meters apart. I'll do that same thing again. It doesn't matter, you don't have to match it up with mine exactly, but just make them all the same. Whatever measurement, whatever distance you choose, just make them uniform. Okay, and I'm snapping to grid so that they are indeed uniform. Now I'm going to link all these curtains. Link. And again, like we did with the posts, we're going to shift copy. We're going to rotate that 180 degrees because they're going to be facing the other way. Beautiful. We're going to slide that over until it snaps under the gold outer ring again. Lovely. And we're going to slide these down. Now, how can we be sure that they are in the same position, especially while they're linked together? How can we be sure that they're in the right spot compared to the other curtains? Well, the answer is in Edit Linked. So I've clicked that Edit Linked box there. Let's click on this one, and that is on the red axis 120.75. If we click on the one on the other side, it's 120.625. So this one, these four are out by 0.125. So I'll click on them again, and up the top where it says in my case 120.75, I need to move it back to 120.625. And now they should match up perfectly. 120.625, 120.625. And because they're all linked, I don't need to check the other 6 because they're all part of the same thing. Okay, let's do that again for the back. Now with the back, I believe we have 6 curtains. No problem at all. We'll pull another copy. And we'll select one of these and simply delete it, unlink it, and delete it. These other 3, let's just snap them to the nearest round number, 115.5. Then we'll do another drag copy, and you can see that because I'm using the snap to grid, they're all the same distance apart. Link those 2 together, and there's our 6. Rotate it 90 degrees back so that they're facing the right way. And again, slide it so that the blue Z-axis is under that outer lip. Perfect, in fact it's directly under the pole. Okay, now we need to line up the north-south, the green axis. Okay, so you can see that isn't straight. Because we're snapping to grid, it shouldn't be too hard. Looking at that visually, I'd say that's spot on. That gap there looks very similar to that gap there, but we will double check that, of course. Edit linked. My base is located at 215 on the green. So, and that one by comparison is 117.75. I'll try to find one that doesn't involve as much maths. No, we're out of luck. Okay, so there's actually 2 ways you can do this. You can, I know that's the right gap just from experience, but 215, in my case that's 213.125, so it's out by 1.875 from the center. So this one would need to be at 1.875, so that one's going to be at 216.875. So yeah, that's right. What you can also do is there's underneath that snap box there, there's something called Edit Axis at Root. You can untick that box, and instead of taking the measurement from the root prim, it takes it from the middle of all your prims. I don't use this one much because it does create a few accidents along the way, but it's handy for this sort of thing where you're trying to line it up. And if you look at it now, it says 215, so it basically verifies what I just found out the hard way. But it's perfectly lined up on the green axis. So I'll tick that again because I really don't like leaving that unticked. And now I'm going to link all my curtains together, because guess what? We're finished. Link, there's only one thing left to do, and we'll also link that to the root of the base. Bang. And that is to colour our curtains. So I'm going to choose every unclick. I've got edit linked highlighted. I'm going to click on every second curtain. And make it blue. So if we go to texture, we'll use one of the textures rather than colouring it. Light blue. Look at that. Done. Isn't that beautiful? And now you can see, you can drag it around. It's one piece. You've just made your first build. Give yourself a pat on the back. Tomorrow, or maybe not tomorrow, but the next episode in coming days, we're going to fit a sensor, which is your first scripting project. We're going to fit a sensor to this, which is going to form the foundation of several other scripts, and it's going to detect when you're near or when someone else is near, and it's just going to make interesting things happen. It's going to be a bit of fun, but that's our next step, getting into scripts. We might even touch on a few animations. I haven't fully thought out the next one yet, but yeah, it'll build on from this one and promises to be interesting. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I know it was a bit lengthy, but there was a lot of information to get in there. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next tutorial. Have a great one. Bye.